Hi, everybody, and welcome to Designated Driver, the happy hour or happy half hour podcast where we get to meet somebody from a database community and some platform that integrates with Apache Superset and get to know them over a beer or whatever beverage they're into. For those who don't know what Apache Superset is, if you're from a different crowd, then we're an open source BI tool and part of the Apache Software Foundation. If you don't want to host and configure open source software, we also work for Preset, which is a SaaS version of that, a commercial offering with some extra bells and whistles on top of it. So you can try that out for free if you'd like. But as far as this episode goes, we've got a special guest from Apache Drill today. So let's go ahead and do some self-introductions. I'll go ahead and pass the mic to Beto first.
All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Beto de Almeida. I am a Superset committer, PMC member. I've been working with the project for almost 7 years now. And Superset connects to more than 50 different databases. I think the bulk of the work I do is making sure it integrates nicely with whatever database you want to use. But I do work all across the stack. I'm also passionate about data visualization. So that's what I do.
See, and what beer did you bring today? You can make that introduction.
Oh yeah, today it was hard to find a drill-related beer. I got a beer called the Space Camper. I assume if you go to Space Camp, they're going to be drills.
Oh, okay. I like
So
it. That works.
It's an Imperial IPA.
I'll go ahead and go next. Then I'm Evan Rusakis. I'm also a Superset PMC member and work for Preset as a developer advocate. So you probably see me making a bunch of noise on GitHub and Slack and various other places where Superset things happen. And today, since we're all dependent on the ASF here, and ASF's arguably dependent on us, and Drill and Superset are dependent on each other, I brought Circular Dependency from a local brewery called Cerebral. They make good stuff. Then I'll pass it over to Charles.
Hi, thank you, Evan and Beto, for having me today. My name is Charles Givre. I'm the PMC chair actually for Apache Drill, and I've been involved in that for, I don't know how long now, 6 or 7 years. I co-authored the Riley book about it, and have been just working on it for a long time. My day job, I do a lot of like cybersecurity and data analytics work. I also teach in that theme. And for my beer, I was boring, and I just brought a Modelo Negra, just because we actually just cleaned out our drink refrigerator, and that was what was available. But there it is.
It's a classic choice. You use that one when you're studying to be a beer judge. It's one of the so-called classic examples.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's fantastic. And first off, I just wanted to say thanks for being not only a part of the show, but part of the Superset community. You've contributed to our product, and that's an unusual thing of one of our guests. So thanks for participating and making our little world better. But I'm generally curious how you got involved with Drill. What's kind of the origin story of the project and your role there?
Sure. So my story was that I had been working on some government contracts and doing some cybersecurity data analytics, and we kept running into this problem where there's all this data all over the place, and it's in a lot of different formats. And I went to the Strata conference. I think it was in Silicon Valley, and I was talking to a guy, Ted Dunning, and his wife, Ellen Friedman. And I was just kind of talking to them about, we're trying to do this project. It's really, really quite difficult. I think Ellen mentioned to me like, hey, have you tried Drill? I was like, nope. And so, okay. So I went home, downloaded it, tried it out. And at the time, it frankly worked really poorly. But what it really intrigued me was the possibility of being able to write ad hoc queries across disparate data sets without having to like load them into anything. In the cyber world, I wasn't so much concerned about like the being able to query data lakes at scale. It was more of just like, I have this data, it's in all these different formats. I don't want to write ETL jobs or Python scripts just to do that because I don't even know if it's worth doing. So it was really intriguing to me. So I kind of started following it and following the threads, and there was this whole discussion at the time about getting Drill to be able to read web server logs. I was like, that's intriguing. And so just kind of one thing led to another, and I went to another Strata conference, bumped into Ted and Ellen again, and started talking to them. And then Ted said something to me where he's like, I've always wanted to get Drill to query PCAP files. And for anyone who's not aware, PCAP's raw network traffic, and so that's a big data source for us cybersecurity folks. And when he said that, it was just kind of like that was a real light bulb moment for me. Like, whoa! If you could have this tool that you could point it at arbitrary data and just query it using SQL at scale, and this thing scales. That's incredible. So I started that was really the moment for me when I was like, okay, I really do have to learn this. I took it back to my bosses at Booz Allen at the time, and I was like, look, this could be a really major thing. And that was when I discovered that, if you're working for a consultancy, going to them and saying, hey, I have a great way where we can reduce the number of billable hours we're charging is not a great argument, that they're going to be really into. But it seemed like a really great enabler though. And so over the years, I've viewed Drill not so much as like the query engine for big data, but more of as the Swiss Army knife or Swiss Army chainsaw, to quote the Pearl book, for data. Whereas you can throw it at a lot of things so that you can iterate very quickly, and you can work with data without having to kind of deal with all the plumbing that goes behind it. And so that kind of was and is my interest in Drill. And I'll also add, at the same Strata conference, I think one or two, I went to a bunch of them in a row, and then that was when I got introduced to Superset. And I remember sitting in Max's presentation about it, one of the early ones, and just thinking like, holy crap, if you combine Superset with Drill, that's an amazing possibility. Like the possibilities there are really incredible, because you have this tool that can help you visualize, can work with the SQL-based data sources. And then you have this query engine that can, in theory at least, query virtually any data. That's really neat, and that we need to make that happen. So that kind of was what inspired me to start working on the Drill SQL Alchemy Connect dialogues, and that took me a while. And I was working on it with another guy named John Almernick, and eventually we both kind of got that out the door. But that was kind of how I got into all this.
That's cool. I feel that's a very common problem, like trying to find data, get the data together, so you get to the point where you can start like analyzing, look at the data. I come from oceanography. I used to be a climate scientist, and climate scientists, they solve this problem also like in different ways, but it's also the same idea. Like I remember reading, we spend like 80% of the time trying to get the data to a point where it's useful. Right? So which is why it's important to have tools that let you just like fast forward that.
Yeah, I think it's a very common problem. In the last couple of years, I worked at a startup, and I mean, even relatively common data sources, like you'll find businesses that they run their business off of a shared drive full of Excel files, and the ability to be able to run SQL queries across that whole folder is something like they would never even think to do. But so like, if you had data in that format, that becomes trivial with Drill, because you can just point it at folders, you can point it at single files, you can point it at other data sources, and it becomes very easy to start working with data like that.
Yeah, and looking at your website, it connects to all sorts of things that our users typically ask us about when they start getting serious. Like, it's inevitable that somebody's going to say, "How do I connect to my Mongo?" or some other NoSQL thing, or their S3 buckets, or whatever. So you kind of provide that missing link there.
Yep.
It's always either you guys or the Presto Trino kind of. That usual list. How do your users or customers or whatever you refer to them as compare you against that? The comparison's got to be inevitable.
It is. So for the last 3 years, I was trying to build a startup around this concept. Unfortunately, it didn't end up working out. But I'll answer it just from my perspective and working with people with doing this. What I kind of tended to see, and this is maybe this is just my perspective on this. I don't speak for anybody else, but where I saw Drill as being more useful, like the Presto and Trino. What I saw was they work really well with data lakes, but the second if you try to run them on a laptop, it's not quite the same experience. And the number of different types of data sources that they work with is definitely not as diverse as Drill is. And so the other piece that Drill does that's a really unique feature is the schema discovery piece of it. So what drill can do, and if you're thinking like with relational databases, that's not such a big deal. But if you talk about things like XML files, or I mentioned PCAP or other things like that, the fact that you can just point drill at them and you don't have to tell it what kind, the columns, the names, the data types, all that kind of stuff. The fact that it can just figure that out for you is a huge differentiator. And I can tell you from all the pull requests that we've debugged, it's not an easy problem. It's one of those things that sounds really easy until you try to do it. And that's another kind of key thing. So I view it more as that, like, I'll use the phrase again, that Swiss Army chainsaw for data versus like that query engine that you'll put on the data lake. I think that when Dremio kind of diverged from drill, they kind of, from my perspective at least, took that more of enterprise data lake approach versus that like rip any data apart. So that's kind of how I see it as being the distinguishing factor. But I mean, other people, I have no, like, people use it for all kinds of things, and yeah, I don't really know, but that's my perspective at least.
And how does it work with? I mean, I've used drill in the past, but I never went in depth in the architecture. How does it work when you're querying files? Does it create an index the first time, or is it always like scanning everything?
So it depends is the answer. Drill has a metastore feature, and so what you can do is you can basically have drill scan the file and extract the metadata. What that will do is that, in theory at least, that will give it schema information that is used for query planning. You can also skip that process and just query the data, and then it scans it every time.
Interesting.
I think you mentioned you had some form of a little demo. I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but if you want to show that might explain a lot of what's going on.
Yeah, sure.
If you need a minute to get that going, we can check in on our beers real quick. I'm curious, how are they?
Doing well.
How's yours, Beto? I was curious about that one.
It's okay. It's an imperial IPA. I don't think it's anything special. It is good. It's just nothing stands out.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and make an endorsement here. I don't know where you can get Cerebral outside of Colorado, but this is a Fooder cold IPA, which is a lot of weird things. But I don't know if you've seen Fooders, but they're these giant barrels essentially, and so they've barrel aged this cold IPA, and a cold IPA is like using ale yeast but fermented at lager temperatures, so it's like a hybrid style.
Oh, interesting.
But anyway, this thing's knocking it out of the park for me, so I just had to muse on that for a moment. Anyway, sorry to disrupt the demo. Looks like you're ready.
Okay.
Fire it well.
All right. So I thought I would just kind of show just some of the different data sources that you can query with drill. And obviously if you can query them, then you can do other things like create visualizations and do all sorts of fun stuff. Drill uses more or less standard SQL. So if the dialect is closest to MySQL. So if you have experience with MySQL, the learning curve is like near nothing. So it's really straightforward there. So this is querying regular files is really not all that interesting because it just looks like querying regular files. So here is the CSV file. I mean, you can run any kind of SQL on that. So big deal. This is just on my local disk. Now, what's neat though is you can also do things like I can connect this to Dropbox, for example, and let's see what we've got here. I queued up a bunch of queries here, but so we're running the risk of live demos here. So I'll pull this up and let's see what we got here.
Don't worry, we'll totally edit this and polish it up.
Yeah.
Awesome. What is this? Dropbox.root. HTTP. Okay, here we go. I will say querying Dropbox is a little bit slower just because I don't think their API is really meant to do this sort of thing. But this is querying a file live from Dropbox. So again, you can write SQL queries this way. You don't have to move data around. You can just have at it with this. And another thing that I'll mention is drill does have the capability of drilling into these nested objects. So if I wanted to pull out these individual fields, you can do that, and you can aggregate on them, and you can do all sorts of stuff like that. So it's pretty neat like that. Now that's kind of so this is a JSON file. You can also come on. There we go. I don't know how my computer's not. Okay. You can also talk to things like to not kind of non-traditional data sources. And so this example here is Splunk. I have an instance running on my local machine here, and so this is you can query Splunk with drill. Hopefully, there we go.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to this. So, but what's really neat is you can, so like, for example, let's just do server, what is that, server IP, and this is just some data I generated, so I don't know what's going to show here. Just kind of to show how this works. P by, and the beauty of this stuff is that you don't have to learn Splunk's query language to do this. So this is, for me,
Yeah.
I'm a lazy person and don't want to learn other query languages. So if I wanted to do these kinds of things, that just makes it that's just really nice. Now, drill also is quite extendable, so I can do things. You can do things like. So I wrote a whole bunch of different UDFs that are useful. User-defined functions that are useful for security analysis. So, for example, and I hope I just reset this computer and I didn't. Let's try true. So I wrote a suite of server IP as tree. All right.
Oh, nice. So this is ADF that uses like a table to get the mapping between IP and country.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, it's using the Maxmind database. I have a feeling I just didn't install this function on here, or I'm not remembering what it's called. Anyway, okay, demo file. In any event, I have a suite of like network analysis functions that can geolocate IPs. There's other ones that are now part of drill that can do things like rip apart user agent strings. You can parse URLs and pull out all the different components of that, and then you can analyze that. So it makes working with this data like really fast because you don't have to like write pull in modules and do all that kind of stuff to do that.
Right.
This example is a module that this is something that I wrote that I'm kind of proud of, which is the drill's API connector. So this query right here is actually it's pulling down data from GitHub's API, and you can see like this is telling these are all the all of the all the repos that belong to the Apache organization, and so you can query that. Again, you don't have to learn any of the mechanics of the API. You can just literally query it like it's an SQL with SQL. This will do all sorts of cool stuff. Like it will handle OAuth, it will handle pagination. So if your API is limited to 100 records per request, it can blast out as many different requests as you need to get your data source. So it's insanely powerful. Another kind of neat thing is you can query Google Sheets with this. I saw that I've been sort of following the Superset integration with Google Sheets, but one of the things you can do with drill is you can actually query that as well, again with SQL, and then you can merge that across other data sources. So yeah, there's that. Another API I was messing around with, if you want to know about Pokemon, you can query the Pokemon API.
And also here you're querying different like schemas, but I assume you can write a query that joins these schemas together.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just really a standard join. Like you just have to have two columns that contain the same data. They don't have to be the same data type. That you could just kind of point that out. Another kind of neat thing, you can query PDF files that have tables in them with drill. So that's kind of another neat feature. So here the last thing I'll show you is this. So this is querying a PCAP file, and this was something that Ted Dunning wrote, and it's insanely fast. And what's neat about this also is there's some other syntactic sugar you can use, which will roll up PCAPs into network sessions. So if you just query the file by itself, you get each packet as an individual row. If you turn this sessionize option on, you get those compressed into sessions, and you get different metadata. So if you're doing network analytics, it's really, really super useful. So that's my I could go on and show you more random crap that drill can do, but cool. I think you kind of get the idea.
This is the kind of thing I love, just, bringing data together, especially if you can use SQL. SQL is like the lingua franca of querying data.
it really
Yeah.
makes it easy because like if I want to share data with you and you have a platform like this, I mean, I can just send you the query and
Yeah.
then you can, and over the last few years in drill, we've done a lot with the access controls. So the drill from years ago is nothing like the drill of today with respect to
Mm-hmm.
access controls. We've also done a lot around the schema discovery works just way better than it did in years past. And another thing that we've added, another really, really useful functionality is the ability to both read and write to data sources.
Mm-hmm.
So most data sources now are bidirectional. So you can read and some of them you can append to, but I mean, drill
Mm-hmm.
was originally intended for just reading data, but it is nice to like let's say you have a Splunk instance, you could theoretically use drill to push data back into Splunk as well as just querying it. So yeah.
Could you edit the table on the PDF? Or is that asking too much?
You can't write data back out to that. I think as far as
Yeah.
file formats, you can write out to like CSV,
Like
JSON, and Parquet. I
CSV.
think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Yeah. That would be cool. I noticed you're using a lot of dot notations in your schemas. Is that because Superset doesn't support catalogs, so it's not exposed as like a hierarchy of catalog, schema, table?
a good question. To be honest, I wrote the that part of the driver a really long time ago, and
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't remember.
Yeah. Okay. I'm asking because we are adding support this week to catalog as a
Okay,
hierarchical level, so it might make it easier. I don't know. If people are
yeah,
connecting to drill, they can choose Dropbox, and then they can have, I don't know, root.
drill does support that, so you can do a use query, and then yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you can do that.
Yeah, I feel that's becoming more and more common with like modern databases.
I was going to ask a kind of related question. Since you're obviously a Superset user and contributor as well, I wondered if there's anything that's kind of on your Superset wish list that would make life easier or better for drill users.
So I would love, I don't know if like something I've thought about doing a bit is working a little bit on the connector, the SQL Alchemy driver to just get better schema metadata now that actually drill produces better schema metadata. I would love to see, I think this is probably just inevitable, is more Gen AI kind of integrated into the interface. One of the things that we did at my company was we built a text to SQL like query generator assistant. And
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised at how well that worked with drill and when you can provide it the schema information. So the ability to just be like, hey, how many widgets did I sell in the last 3 quarters and have it just generate a query that does that, I think that would be really slick. And then integrate
Yeah,
that into the overall tool, like, oh, and run this query every other day and send it to me or something like that.
yeah.
Um, I,
We do have that at preset.
I saw that. I saw that.
As a premium feature, yeah. So it analyzes
Yeah.
your database schema, and then you can write queries. But it's interesting because it's like it's easier to do this in drill because drill has a fixed syntax, right? It's like has its own syntax. Well, for Superset, it's really hard to get the dialect right. There's so many
Yeah.
differences between different databases that to get the dialect right all the time is not trivial.
That was one of the big challenges that I found when I was working on that was getting it so that it would not only answer the question correctly, but get it in a dialect that will work. Because there's a lot of,
Yeah,
yeah, like you said, there's a lot of nuance in that.
yeah,
And
yeah. Even like how do you truncate a metric every month or every week, right? That the syntax is
Mhm.
completely different. Like some databases have date trunc, some uses something else. Um, yeah,
That's one of the things I always wish for in terms of generative AI is sort of SQL autocorrect that would say, "Oh, you're using the wrong date function. It's from some other database, but it looks like you're using this." So we can
Yeah,
make that for you. That, that's
there
one of
was a
my.
library that I used called SQL Glot, and I don't know if you've played with that and
yeah.
that. So I wrote a drill dialect for that, and
Oh,
that
nice.
actually proved very useful in the widget that I wrote that did the Gen AI piece, it actually did a lot of that translation. So somebody, if the Gen AI used, I don't know, came up with the wrong date format, it would convert it
Mm-hmm.
to date trunk or whatever the correct one is.
Yeah, we've been using SQL a lot in Superset. It became part of Superset, and because like before we had a SQL parser that was dialect agnostic, so it would like it had this huge list of reserved keywords for all the different databases,
Oh,
and we would
yeah.
get errors because like somebody like it would say, "Hey, this is a reserved keyword in the query," but people are running a query in Trino. So now we're using SQL and for the databases that have a SQL dialect, when we parse the SQL, because we do a lot of access control also, we need to parse the SQL to
Hmm.
figure out which tables, which schemas, which catalogs people are accessing. So now we use the dialect information when parsing, and that helps a lot. It was a bit
Cool.
crazy before.
Well, let me change gears a little bit. I've got to ask you one of the hard-hitting questions that we always like to ask our guests as maybe a bit of a personality test, but we're wondering what's on your desk. If do you have anything
Oh,
cool you can show us?
okay. When you told me that, I thought I'd come prepared. So I've got two things, if that's
Oh,
okay.
okay.
One is, given that I like to toy with cybersecurity stuff and breaking things, Flipper One.
Oh,
Um,
Oh
nice.
so,
yeah, I
so
want one of those.
Nice.
I have a slightly smaller desk now. I used to have a lock picking set here, but I'll, my other thing, which doesn't quite fit on my desk, is my trombone. So I
Oh,
play
Oh,
trombone.
cool.
So
nice. A fellow bass clef reader.
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. That tells us a lot about you. This little segment's working, I think.
Yeah. I mean, we can start a band also if data. If
Yeah.
we're replaced by AI, we can. Evan has the basses behind him,
I don't know if you've noticed
trombone.
this. Have you found in your world that there's an extremely high correlation between, data centric engineering types and musicians? There's a big overlap.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And even if the person doesn't play, I think like I find that people have like a really good, like they'll really be into it. Maybe they're not like a musician themselves, but yes, I absolutely think so. It's funny. I was talking to someone at another company this week, and the Zoom call opens up and he had a whole wall of guitars. I'm like, yep,
Yeah,
we're gonna get on.
Yeah. I have music instruments here too. This is
Nice.
like a weird drum machine.
yeah. I've got a bunch of basses
Nice.
back there. I haven't been playing enough lately because I hurt my finger recently, but
Ooh,
I'll be better.
my my college roommate was a bass player. They played upright though.
Oh man, that's dangerous. I've played many. I've always wanted one, but boy, those things get pricey if you want a decent one.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
But
It's amazing how
cool.
small of a car you can actually get one in, though.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Until you get one of the hard shell cases for those things, those are
Yeah.
huge. But let's see. So going back to our respective projects, I'm curious if you have anything kind of new or upcoming on your roadmap or in your latest release that you're excited about that you can tell our world.
Yeah. So we are about to release we're about to release a bug fix release, which is not that exciting, but it does have some decent improvements in it. One of the we are also getting ready for the next like major release of Drill, which will the biggest thing that it's going to have is an integration with another Apache project called Daffodil. And what Daffodil does, I don't really know that much about it, but it's like a schema mapping tool that is used in enterprise. And so for a lot of like kind of niche data sets, so like healthcare records, a lot of scientific things, I guess. I don't really know, but basically someone in the Daffodil community saw Drill and was like, hey, that would be really neat if we could integrate these two, because then we could query all this really weird data that we have. And so I've been kind of trying to help them kind of get this to work. And I would say we're very close to getting that merged. And so I'm pretty excited about that, because I think that opens a lot of possibilities for different people to use Drill. So yeah, that
That's really interesting.
hopefully
Yeah.
in the next couple of weeks that'll happen.
Fantastic. Let's see. I guess also, do you have any events or kind of community touch points you'd want to point out for people to get involved with, or any kind of upcoming meetups or anything?
Not at the moment, but if anybody's interested, I mean, we are always like right now. I mean, we've been expanding our Slack channel, so if anybody's interested in joining that or contributing to Drill is frankly challenging. It is a beast of a tool. It's really hard to learn how to like actually write the code. But if someone's interested in kind of doing that, I mean, I would say please reach out to me. I'm happy to, or just if you're looking to learn more about it, I mean, please contact me. I'm happy to.
I was going to ask about that actually. Like if I want to, like the Dropbox integration, like if you want to write something like that, it's written in Java. I don't even know the programming.
It's in Java.
It's Java. So I would have to write like a class in Java or something.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, like, so I did the Dropbox one, and once I kind of figured out how to do it, it was actually really easy. I think it was like one class, and you just have to implement a few methods. Figuring that out though was really hard.
Yeah.
But once we did it, it was actually really easy. And then I also did one for Box, and I started to do one for OneDrive. But I like, also OneDrive would be quite easy to do. Just there's a library that it's not on Maven Central, and it's kind of a pain in the butt to get off. And so at that point, I was like, all right, if somebody wants it, they can tell me about it. But I would love to build integrations for like the other kind of cloud, like iCloud or anything where there's like these remote file systems. I think that would be a good addition. And those are actually really easy to do, like I said.
Okay. So there's some. Is there kind of an ecosystem that people can jump in and more easily contribute one of those connectors or dialects or whatever the proper term is?
Yeah, I don't know what the term for those are. I mean, there's not really like those end up just getting integrated into Drill. I mean, most of those kinds of extensions we tend to just integrate unless there is some like licensing reason not to.
There's no mechanism for discovery or for like loading your third party. Like
no, we had debated adding that, but it's the way Drill's architected. It's actually it's kind of difficult to do that. You can write third-party user-defined functions and add those. There isn't like a central repository of them. I've tried to compile lists of them over the years, but what ends up happening is we end up just integrating them into Drill, so you don't have to deal with like third-party jar files or something. The only one that's not like that is the IP geolocation. That's because it requires the thing from MaxMind.
Cool. I think we're approaching time here, so we'll probably wrap this up. But thank you very much for joining us today and the demo and everything.
My pleasure.
And beyond. It's been really cool. So cheers once more. And
cheers.
Well, thank you everybody for listening. Please check out Drill, check out Superset, check them out together. Appreciate you being here, and see you at a Community Over Code and whatever other conferences we cross paths at in the future. All right.
Thank you.